The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios.
Hi, this is Mia Mosinzia, also known as Mia No Time for Love. Check out my latest book, Missing, available in print and ebook formats on Amazon.
It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios and sponsored by international award-winning author Mia Mosinzia of Missing. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on over 40 podcast platforms, as well as HamiltonRadio.net, Diamonds FM, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We can be heard in over 100 countries, featuring over 1,000 well-known and amazing guests throughout the globe. And named one of the top 100 global podcasts in the New York Weekly Times, Hollywood Entertainment News, Los Angeles Weekly Times, Apple, and Chartable. So sit back and relax and enjoy another great episode of the award-winning Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for your needs, and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Mosinzia Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We're here with an amazing lady who's multi-talented, who's a DJ and a promoter from Coral Springs, Florida, with a passion for music beginning at the age of 12. She began DJing at the age of 20 at Lynn University in Boca Raton. Also played violin, piano, and also in church, music recitals, in orchestras, on a Beatles tribute concert, and also an avid Beatles fan, and interviewed a lot of great musicians. And she's also got the history and rock and roll, talk about her radio show, and also some upcoming events, a lot of Beatles memorabilia, live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in beautiful sunny Florida. We got the multi-talented DJ, promoter, and radio host of our wonderful show, The History of Rock and Roll, ladies and gentlemen, Meagan Paese. Meagan, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem, Mike. It's good to be on your show for the very first time. And I want to say thank you for this nice introduction. I appreciated it.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Meagan. So you're a DJ and promoter from Coral Springs, Florida, with a passion for music beginning at 12, and you began DJing at 20 at Lynn University in Boca Raton. You also play violin, piano. You also performed in church, music recitals, and an orchestra at a Beatles tribute concert. And you also are an avid Beatles fan, and also follow a lot of music. You got the website, History of Rock and Roll. You also got events coming up. You got a radio show. And before getting to all that, Meagan, tell us how you first got started.
Okay. Well, you see, it all started 20 years ago when I was 12 years old. You see, I was into cartoon as a young kid first, and I want to know about cartoons. But then when a Disney film, Lilo and Stitch, came out, when I was watching a trailer, they were playing a song I liked called Hound Dog. And then I started liking it. And then all of a sudden, I asked my dad, who sings that song? And he said, Elvis Presley. And that's how I got to know about the king of rock and roll, Elvis. And then I start knowing about Elvis's songs like Hound Dog, because that's one of the first songs I got into. Then I know Heartbreak Hotel or Suspicious Minds. And then I start knowing about Elvis, and then start knowing about the oldies music on South Florida's oldies radio. We used to have Magic 102.7, and it's a fun radio station to listen to. You get to listen to all the music from way back then, although it's really before my time. And most people think I'm too young to know these music. And some people said they were amazed about my knowledge of music. And so that's how it happened. I went to Elvis, and then later I went into the Beatles. I've been loving the Beatles ever since, same age. So that's how it all happened. And then as years went on, when I was 15, if someone says, why won't you be a DJ? And then I said, hey, that's a good idea. I'll be a DJ. And then I started to know who the artists were. Some people I started to know who they are, or some I don't know. It's like histories of great music from way back then. Like we first learned about the 50s, because 50s is a decade with the birth of rock and roll. The 60s is another generation that changed everything. Well, but the Beatles changed everything, not just rock music, but pop culture. And then we're into the 70s with great soft rock, with great some hard rock or classic rock, or even disco. That changed everything. So I'm into the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I would love doo-wop. I love the British invasion mostly, and I love the psychedelic. I mean, I love everything. I love the Monkees. I love Motown. I love everything, but mostly Elvis, but also mostly the Beatles. And that's what I love.
And was it one precise moment that simply influenced you into what you do in the rest of your career? What was that one precise moment for you?
One precise moment?
Yes.
Let's see. Let's see. My most moment. Well, let's see. Ever since I got into it, let's see. My other moment I like by liking the oldies is concerts, because going to concerts was a lot of fun, and it's like going there to see people, watching the shows that brings memories alive at that time. So that's how I got into it. And then also with rock and roll, when I started going to Lynn University in Boca Raton, that's when it all happened. About 2010, I asked one of the staff saying, why won't you, well, I said, sorry, I was saying, I like to be a radio host someday. And he says, why won't you talk to Bob Trainer? And Bob Trainer's the guy who trains me what to do in the studio. So he taught me what to do, how to use the radio board, how many channels I have to use, and then I had to, and then as I got trained by Bob, I started doing my own show. So I called it The History of Rock and Roll. I would bring my CDs. I would bring like my iPod or anything I could play on YouTube. And that's how it happened. And then later I started to get some guests on the show. Like when I started getting guests, I started to get some people I know from Florida first. That's how it happened. And that's my moment. The concerts and of course the radio.
Mm-hmm. And then how about, besides the Beatles, Elvis, and all the groups you mentioned, who are some of your other favorite artists and singers growing up?
Well, let's see. Oh, that's a good question. Well, besides Beatles and Monkees and Elvis, I love the Rolling Stones. They're one of the greatest band I love. I love the Who, and they're one of the great bands. Those are good questions. I also love country music because there's some yesterday's country I love. I mean, they're fun to watch, they're fun to listen. I mean, that's all I like. So.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we'll also talk about your career as well, too, not just being a DJ. You played violin, piano, and involved a number of projects as well, too. We'll talk about that. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SonicWeb Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SonicWeb Studios is the answer. SonicWeb Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. It's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war-ring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and Eve 11 endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes, Riley, and Eminems. So grab your copy today for Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia. Available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Over 40 podcast platforms heard in over 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music. Also on HamiltonRadio.net every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Also on BitChute, Rumble, and a few networks coming soon. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok today. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also T-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. I'll support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Make sure you do so today. We're here with the amazing DJ and promoter of Coral Springs, Florida, with a passion for music. Meagan Paese here on the Mike Wagner Show. Before I talk about the history of rock and roll, your radio show, and your fabulous career, you play violin, you play the piano, you're in church, music recitals, and you're in the orchestra at a Beatles tribute concert. And tell us about some of your musical background and, what inspired you to do things, and maybe just a bit of story behind it.
Well, let's see. Well, it started with my dad, because my dad used to play violin when he was a teenager through college. While he used to live in New York. Well, you see, when I was in the sixth grade, I was in a music class, and we were starting to learn violin. And then all of a sudden, I start going through my dad's old violin that he used to play a long time ago. And then he got me into music lessons. So I started doing music lessons. I used to take an orchestra class, and that's how it happened. But then all of a sudden, my mom says, "Hey, why won't you do a play like in the orchestra or something?" And I said, "Hey, I like that idea." And then I started trying to play in the church, and I started at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton here in Coral Springs with my music director, Edward Person, great guy, great music director, and great talented pianist. And Ed is like a brother to me, and I would play every mass every Sundays. And also, and to keep me busy at that church, we would do Easter Sundays with the quartet, but mostly we do Christmas, and I would help Ed with Christmas music. and also, besides that, but now since I no longer play at St. Elizabeth, I started ending up playing in another church just temporarily, which is St. Andrew's. And we got some nice people there too. And recently, yes, I did play in an orchestra with a Beatle tribute show, which was last January with the Academy Orchestra. And that was in Stuart, Florida, conducted by Tom Stravinsky, great conductor. And he does a great job organizing and composing all the great arrangement for the Beatle music with a Beatle band, Liverpool Live. I mean, they used to do it with McCartney Mania, but now it's with Liverpool Live. And we do it at the Lyric Theater. And the truth is, it's a lot of fun doing with the orchestra. And the truth is, about me playing music, it's like a gift from the Lord. So.
And that sounds like it as well too. And also, any other pursuits you plan on doing, like with playing orchestras or music or anything like that, besides DJing and having a website as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Sure.
Okay. All right. And of course, you also segue over to the history of rock and roll as well too. And you got that website, got a radio show, and tell us more about that and what inspired you to get that going. So tell us more about your program.
Of course. Well, it's still at Lynn University, and it's a 50s, 60s, and 70s show, and sometimes 80s. We play music like to keep memories alive. We do it for fun. And also, we play Beatles mostly. We do Who Comes in Concerts. We do a tribute, anniversaries, lots others. And it's like for fun. And also, we get a lot of guests to call in on the show. And I said earlier, we get people that called in. One from Florida. We had Chris McDonald on the show when we do an Elvis topic. When we do Beatles, I would have Joe Johnson on. He's the host of Beatle Brunch, a really great personality, great friend of mine, and a most trusted guest. I had Joe on the show, and we would talk about Beatles, but what is coming up, including Paul or Ringo's upcoming concert, or what upcoming CDs or anniversaries on the Beatles. Besides that, we have people come in the studio, including forms in a band in South Florida. Besides that, we get someone famous on the show. The first one we had someone famous was Bobby Hart, who wrote songs for the Monkees, and having Bobby was amazing and really nice guy. And then we started to get other ones famous, like we had Jim Peterick from Ides of March. He was great.
He's a really good one. I like him.
Yes, he's great. And then also we started to get others. We got Tommy James on the show. He's amazing. We had John Sebastian. We had Joey Mullen from Badfinger, if you love Badfinger. We also had Rod Argent from Zombies. We also have like photographers on the show. Elliot Lanning, he's a photographer for Woodstock. We had Henry Deltz. He's another amazing photographer in California. We had Bob Gruen, who took pictures for John Lennon from New York. I mean,
oh my
he's
gosh,
amazing.
wow.
Yes, we had Chuck Leavell on the show. He plays for the Rolling Stones for 40 years. I mean, he's another amazing guy to talk to. We had Denny Tedesco, the film director for The Wrecking Crew. I mean, he's great. Excuse me. And of course, for Beatles, we would get a lot of guests to talk about the Beatles, including Beatle authors. And this was the idea by a woman named Nicole Michael of the 910 Public Relation. And she suggested me to get some authors on the show. And I like the idea. We get Terry Crane. He wrote a book on the Beatles merchandise, the Nems. We had Jude Sutherland Kessler. She wrote a book on, she wrote a book on series on John Lennon. We even had Kenneth Womack, a Beatle historian. We also had Jay Bergen, who does a trial as a trial lawyer for John Lennon against Morris Levy. We also had Lori Jacobson on her new book, Top of the Mountain, on the Beatles at Shea Stadium. Of course, Dave Swenson, he wrote the same book about Shea Stadium, but a different kind of story about Shea Stadium. And we have Robert Haranias on Yellow Submarine. He was amazing too. And besides Beatles, we would have guests to talk about the connections on the Monkees besides Bobby Hart. I had two people that played for Mickey Dolenz, and they were amazing, Wayne Neighbors and John Billings. We also had a couple of people to talk about Monkees on Monkey Mania Radio, like Charles Rosnay. And Rosnay's a great guy. And I would have him talk about Beatles and Monkees because he does conventions and events on the Monkees and the Beatles. We also have, we have Mick Lawless. He was great. We also have Fred Velez on the Beatles book he came out, A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You, and A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You, #2. That was amazing. And also we had the person you interviewed, and he's also a really big Monkey fan, Mickey Galena.
Yeah, I know him. That's right. What a guy. Should we give a big shout out to him or something since he helped you get on? Yes. I mean, he's got to be the number one Monkees fan, Beatles fan, whatever fan, you fan, everything else. So
yeah. So yeah, I had him on to talk about the Monkees too. Anything, any topics. And then we do shows who comes in concert, as I said, the Stones. We did the Who. We do everything. And then there's someone's tribute who passed away recently. We do that. Or anniversaries. We would do the years. So that's it. So that's what I do for fun. And of course, on my website, we get more listeners on the show. Like one time when I do live, we start to get more listeners. But with the rebroadcast now as a podcast, we get more and more listeners as well. So we get listeners from Florida. We get listeners from Los Angeles, well, actually California, Vegas, New York. We got one in Memphis. We got listeners from like London and Liverpool. And we also got listeners from Sirius XM, the Beatles channel, and 60s Gold. And we even got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tuning in, and the Musician Hall of Fame in Nashville. So
wow, that's interesting. And what percentage would you say that the people from Liverpool tuned in, since you mentioned about that?
Ooh, that's a good question, Mike. Well, let's see. That's a really good question. Well, let's see.
What or not percentage would be like maybe like a good portion, like in the middle, the higher up, the lower. It's like, where would you say like good portion of Liverpool? You said you get a good portion of people from Liverpool tuning in.
Well, let's see. Maybe medium or higher. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. Really hard to tell.
Okay. And also too that you've been on the Beatles a lot as well too. What was the most interesting Beatles story that you ever encountered, or what was the most interesting Beatle topic that you interviewed that just really blew your mind? What was the most interesting that really stood out for you?
Wow. There's a lot of topics about the Beatles that I like. I mean, let's see. That's a really good question, Michael. Let's see. Okay, let's see.
or like say about the Shea Stadium, or John Lennon's photographer, or even like the Cavern Club, or anything like that, or even like what's the most bizarre, like say with Ringo Starr and their offshoots and everything, Paul McCartney, what he likes to eat or anything like that. There's stories that you talk to people, but it's like, what was like the most interesting interview that you have ever talked to, and talk about that? What was the most interesting interview that stood out to you?
Well, there's one last February. I did a show called The Beatles Fab Four Cities. That's like in Liverpool, London, Hamburg, and New York. And I interviewed 3 amazing guests on the show, and they're like tour guides. David Bedford, he's an author on Liddy Pool, and he's like a tour guide learning about Liverpool. And he's also an author on other books on the Beatles, like on the Beatles, like the 5th Beatle, like finding a drummer, or the Beatles into country music. So David Bedford's great. Another one, Richard Porter, he's another great tour guide, and he would tell you about the different locations the Beatles in London. Like you'll see where Paul lives at St. John's Wood, or he'll tell you about Abbey Road, like where the fans can walk across at that zebra crossing where the Beatles did for their album, Abbey Road, or Savile Road, where the Beatles did the rooftop concert, or even, wow, lots of others in London. And also there's Susan Ryan. She's amazing too, to tell me about the Beatles in New York, including their first U.S. visit, or even where John Lennon stayed in Dakota. That's one I really like the most. That's one topic I like on the Beatles at Fab Four Cities.
Now, what about the guests that directly interacted with John, Paul, George, and Ringo? It's like, who are some of the guests that you had on that were directly connected to John, Paul, George, and Ringo? Who are some of them?
Well, let's see. Interacting with one of the Beatles. Well, let's see. Well, I interviewed Bob Gruen. He had some good interacting, and he's a close friend with John Lennon. And I would have him talk everything about John. Like he would say,
"Oh, really? Like what?"
Well, like you would talk about how John had Bob to take a picture of John, like to the Statue of Liberty, because John wants to show that he wants to be kept in the U.S. because when he was in New York, Nixon was trying to kick him out of the country at that time because of Vietnam War. And also he also had Bob Gruen take pictures of him anywhere until John passed on, until he got shot and killed. But that was a good interaction. Let's see. Another one is.
Now, let me get back to Bob Gruen. Was Bob Gruen the photographer, the one that took the picture of John Lennon the night he was killed?
No, he didn't. But there was a woman I heard who took pictures of John right before he got killed on that day, was Annie Leibovitz. She took some shots right before he got killed.
Wow. That was something. And
yes.
You probably have her on the show too. And, going back to.
Really.
What's that?
No, I didn't have Annie Leibovitz on, just Bob Gruen.
Okay. And then you also want to talk about some of the others as well, too, like, more on John Lennon connected than George, Paul, Ringo, and everything else. It's like, basically it's like, what was George's personality, Paul's personality, Ringo's personality, based on, the people he had on. It's like with their interactions with these guys.
Okay, well, I got one that has interaction with Paul McCartney, and this guy is the former guitarist for Wings since 1978, and that is Lawrence Juber.
Oh, yes, that's it. I love Wings. That's one of my favorites, yes.
Yes, Lawrence is a great guitarist. I mean, I got him on the show with the help of his wife, Hope Juber, and Hope is actually the daughter of Cheryl Schwartz, the creator of the Brady Bunch. So,
oh my goodness, wow.
Yes, she's the one who helped me. So I got Lawrence, and Lawrence is actually a really nice guy, a really talented guitarist, and also great guitar picking. I mean, he would tell me about how he joined Wings because it started with Denny Lane. And then he tells me how he played with Wings with Paul on the orchestra theme, and that was from the album Back to the Egg. And that was a great album he discussed. We talked about how Paul McCartney got in trouble in Japan. That was back in 1980. So that was a good interaction Lawrence Juber had. That's another one. Another person who had a good interaction with George Harrison I interviewed is Joey Molin from Badfinger.
He told
me a story. Yeah. He told me how Badfinger recorded stuff with George Harrison, including for the All Things Must Pass album. And also when Badfinger joined with George for the concert for the Bangladesh. So that was amazing too. And reaction with Ringo, I interviewed a couple of people that told me some cool stuff with Ringo, including 3 guests I had on that were in the All-Star band with Ringo. I had Mark Farner. He told me some cool, amazing memories he had with Ringo.
I had him on my show. He was terrific.
Yes, from Grand Funk. Great guy, too. We had Rick Derringer, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. He told me some cool moments he had with Ringo, and Rod Argent from the Zombies, because I would ask him, what was your great moment with Ringo Starr? And they would tell me about it. So it was amazing. And
then in terms of like the personalities, is like interacting with Paul and George and Ringo and all that, what were they really like as people? What was Paul really like as a person? What was George really like as a person? And what was Ringo really like a person, according to the guests he had on the show?
Well, let's see. With Ringo, when I was interviewing these artists, they said they think Ringo like has a great time with the All-Star, or even he would give out peace and love, because that's what Ringo is. And Paul McCartney, you can have a sense of humor, to the fans or to the people that were with him too. Or George Harrison, sometimes George can be sometimes nice, and sometimes he could be the quiet Beatle, because that's what he is, the quiet Beatle. So
and of course he's one of the better guitarists as well too. You got to have that balance as well too. And of course there was an interesting thing I had about in terms of leadership, like a leadership style of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, just all the way down the board. So I guess you can say it's like, how would you describe your personality as one of the Beatles?
Oh, describe the personality. Well, that's a good question. Well, it depends on how I meet them. It depends on how you meet them. If you see them, if I ever met them, I would wish I would see them nice, or say hello, or if they have a great sense of humor, it would be great.
Right.
Even with Beatle tribute bands, when I meet them, they sound super nice to me too.
Okay. All right. And plus also too that you also, and what are some of the upcoming Beatle projects that you have on your plate as well?
Oh yes, Beatles on the Beach. It's promoted by a good friend of mine. I mentioned you, Mr. Daniel Hartwell. You see, it started 3 years ago, and we had Edgar Winter headlining for this event with McCartney Mania with the Academy Orchestra, and it was a fun time. And also we're going to be having one in December to make up 2 years ago. So, and we're going to be having Mickey Dolenz part for this event. So that's going to be exciting. And also the exciting news is I'll be interviewing Mickey Dolenz soon in December, which will be the week before the event. So Beatles on the Beach is on December 15th through the 18th. Besides Mickey, we're going to be having the Academy Orchestra with Liverpool Live. And we're also going to be having some great, amazing bands from around the world or around different states. Like we're going to be having Beatline. I met them at Abbey Road on the River, and I suggested them to be part for this event. I found out they're going to be part for it. So they're called Beatline. Finland. We got one from Israel, the Day Trippers. We got one from Brazil, Beat and Shout. We got everybody coming from around the states, I said, around the country. And for me, I'm going to be guest host and speaker for the event, like introducing the bands, and there'll be a lot of great activities we're going to be having, and so on. So I'm actually excited to be Beatles on the Beach, and it's fun.
And it sounds like it. I'm sure they've been on the beach as well too. And what are some of the other Beatle tidbits that people don't know about? What are some of the things that nobody knows about John Lennon or even Paul, George, or Ringo? It's just like you hear about the news about, they like this, they like that, they got their quirks and everything. What are some of the things that, it has not been mentioned in the press that, you've been talk about everything else? It's like, what should we more know about John, Paul, George, Ringo that's been never been to the press, never been asked in questions, interviews, everything like that, just little tidbits. It's like, very few people know about.
I see. Well, yeah, you could say that. Well, when I learned about Beatles, you used to see all the Beatles were into the press, and they had to come up with what answer they had to say in those questions. You're right. You're right. I want to have Paul or Ringo on the show, but the truth is it's hard to get them on the show. It really is.
And I'm sure Paul would have no problem, I'm sure. So
yes. My moments on the Beatles is going to Beatle tribute shows, which is fun, doing a radio show. But the biggest moment I like is seeing Paul in concert. He puts on a great show. And of course, seeing Ringo he does a great job with the All-Star Band. But yes, of course.
Mm-hmm. And he also got some memorabilia as well too. I noticed on the back wall as well too. In the 3 right there, I see reminds me of that great cartoon back in the day. So
yes. Oh, that's the beat up blow up dolls back in like 1965. But what you said is correct, because that is based from that Beatle cartoon, and that's been around since 1965, and it's one of those Saturday cartoons on ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned about that cartoon. Speaking of the cartoons, I 2 years ago, while we were in the pandemic, I interviewed this animator who actually did some Beatle animations on the cartoon and Yellow Submarine, but sadly he passed away, and we were supposed to have him at Beatles on the Beach, and that is Mr. Ron Campbell. Ron Campbell, I mean, another great guy. I mean, he would talk about the Beatles, what kind of sceneries he would put in for the movie and stuff. And besides Beatle cartoons, he would do cartoons on Hanna-Barbera's, even cartoons from Nickelodeon. Well, the earlier Nickelodeon cartoons in the 90s. So, but I enjoy the Beatle cartoons that Ron Campbell does. So.
That's really interesting as well too. And what's your favorite cartoon besides the Beatles growing up? I'm going to throw that out there just for the fun of it. Okay, Megan, are you still with us? Okay, we froze for a minute. Megan,
favorite cartoon?
Yeah, we froze for a minute. Just want to make sure you heard.
Well, let's see.
Okay, let's give time to think
well,
here.
My favorite Beatle cartoons. Let's see. Well, there's favorite I like from the Yellow Submarine movie. The one I like is the music, because George Martin, the producer, does a great job, with a great orchestra arrangement. I thought that was neat as well. The other one I like is, I don't know if you remember this scene. I like when it says to Ringo, whatever you do, don't touch that button. And then when Ringo pressed it, he got shot out. That was funny. Or there's one scene where they meet a nowhere man named Jeremy. I thought that was cute too. So the one I like is Yellow Submarine, because it's one of the great cartoons and best so far.
Or you got those holes all over the place. Ringo picks up and goes, "I've got a hole in me pocket." That's
it. That's the one. I like that too. And when I was reading about the cartoon, those aren't really the Beatles voicing at themselves. It was somebody else pretends they're Beatles.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting as well too. And also we do have a lot for you as well too. And of course we'll have more on the Beatles as well too. And most importantly, what's coming up for Meagan Paese as well too. I'll find out just 1 minute. Listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs, and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war-ring author Mia Mosensia Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. We'll be back with DJ and promoter and the host of History and Rock and Roll, Meagan Paese, after this time out.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Hey everybody, my name is Forbes Riley, and I'm an American actress and a TV host. And I was delighted when I got my copy of Missing, which is Extraordinary Relation of Ordinary People based on a real life relationship. It's well written. It's amazing. It talks about a man who has lost his wife and his daughter, and it's very well done. I'm going to highly recommend that you go get your copy of Missing. It is a powerful, exciting read. Mr. Meagan Paese. He is the author of Missing. And I want to give a big shout out and a kiss all the way halfway around the world to my dear friend. Check him out at Mia's website. It's called www.miamoshenzea.com. Missing, available on Amazon. Again, I'm Forbes Riley, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Ray Powers, and boy, are you in luck. Right place, right time. Tuned in to the Mike Wagner Show. You heard me.
We're back, a DJ and promoter of Coral Springs, Florida, and the history of rock and roll, and number one Beatle maniac, Meagan Paese, here on the Mike Wagner Show. And Meagan, what can we expect from you in 2022 and 23 and beyond?
Well, let's see for myself. Well, I want to keep my radio show going, and I want people in the future to know what the old music was like back then, because in the future, I have to know how it all started. And for myself, I want to keep playing on my violin. I want to keep playing more in the orchestra too. If it's classical, I can do classical. Or if I do American songbooks, that would be great for a great American songbooks. If I play music on Broadway, I would do Broadway. Or if they do a show on rock and roll with symphonic rock, I would do that too. I mean, that's one of my great moments I wish for the future.
All right, well, certainly, go ahead.
And more positive too.
Yes, definitely too. And we're looking forward to that. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
My influence? Well, let's see. My influence in my career. Well, my influence is my violin playing. I mean, I love playing music, and sometimes I like to play music that can play more beautifully, or sometimes emotionally too. Sometimes love songs too. Sometimes I would play more proud on my music. Or for my influence on violin, I want to make it excitement, just like these other DJs does back then as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Advice you can give at this point? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Mike. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's okay. We'll let you figure out later as well, too. And I'm going to throw one more thing out there, which I should have thought of. What is your number one favorite, all-time favorite Beatles song, and why?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I mean, there's a lot. I'm going to go with I Want to Hold Your Hand, because that's one of the first songs I remember when I first heard the Beatles. I mean, it started ever since I got into it when I was just a kid. I mean, the Beatles, that's the song that changed everything for rock and roll. It's one of my favorites, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. And where can we find all your where can we find your radio show, your website, and everything at?
Okay, well, to find it is www.thehistoryofrockandroll.net, and right now it's podcast, just for right now. And you can find these past shows on recorded shows. You can check out on my upcoming shows. And also I have a Facebook page called The History of Rock and Roll. So all I do is post histories, or I post the upcoming shows, you name them.
All right, we'll certainly do that. Once again, we're with Meagan Paese of the History and Rock and Roll from Coral Springs, Florida, and Mike Wagner Show. Meagan, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward to it soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Glad to have you back. And once again, what's your website? How do people contact you? And where can people check you out at?
Oh, well, they can check me out on my website, but also they can check me out on my Facebook as well.
And the website is?
www.thehistoryofrockandroll.net.
And also on podcast, where can we find you on what podcast platform?
Well, I don't know if I have a platform, but my podcast is on my website. All they have to do is find it on the recorded shows. It'll be on there.
Okay, we'll certainly check that out. Once again, Meagan, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Glad to have you back, and wish you all the best. And Meagan, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you. No problem, Michael. I appreciate it.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Hey everybody, my name is Forbes Riley, and I'm an American actress and a TV host. And I was delighted when I got my copy of Missing, which is Extraordinary Relation of Ordinary People based on a real life relationship. It's well written. It's amazing. You know, it talks about a man who has lost his wife and his daughter, and it's very well done. I'm going to highly recommend that you go get your copy of Missing. It is a powerful, exciting read. Mr. Mian Moshe Zia. He is the author of Missing. And I want to give a big shout out and a kiss all the way halfway around the world to my dear friend. Check him out at Mia's website. It's called www.miamotionsea.com. Missing, available on Amazon. Again, I'm Forbes Riley, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Mike Wagner Show. Brought to you by international award-winning author Mia Mosinzia of Missing. And powered by Sonic Web Studios. Be sure to join us again on over 40 podcast platforms. And of course on the MikeWagnerShow.com, HamiltonRadio.net, and Diamonds FM. Don't forget to support our program with a generous donation at the MikeWagnerShow.com. Thanks for listening.